and the answer, of course, is, to a large extent, in very significant ways. I think the key word here, though, is exacerbating. So there was already a lot of discussion about food security and in the region, and the impact of the war has made this discussion even more important and pregnant. I think, all of the MENA countries are dependent to a large degree on food imports from Central and Eastern Europe, and they're being affected in very significant ways. Not only because the import of food has become more uncertain, to put it mildly, but because also the price of food has increased quite significantly around the world. This was a trend that started before the war in Ukraine, and so higher food prices mean food insecurity and a potential food crisis in the region. When it comes to energy, the geometry is more complicated. Some countries in the region are actually stepping up their role as energy exporters as a result of the decision by European countries to reduce their dependency on imports from Russia. Of course, not all the countries in the region are in the same position. Some remain heavily dependent on imports, and high energy prices are creating difficulties for them. The war is also, making it more clear that we need a true energy transition, and we discussed that during today's conference. The elements of that are clear. We need to move towards renewable. Gas will remain part of the equation for a while, but the direction is clear. And within this direction, there are countries such as Morocco that have done really a lot in terms of developing their renewable sectors, and combined with technological advances, these countries can be hopeful that in the medium to long run, they will position themselves as true partners, energy partners of countries across the shore in Europe. I think so. The Barcelona process was launched in the mid-1990s in a completely different geopolitical and also geo-ideological context. In a way, there was a lot of optimism. The Cold War had ended, and Europe was probably overly excited at the time, and looked at the Mediterranean as more and more as a sort of potentially integrated neighborhood, an internal sea, a lake of sorts that could be, somewhat Europeanized together with the southern Mediterranean countries. We are in a completely different situation in which, I think this idea of the Mediterranean as a neighborhood or as a EU backyard has run its course. It looks more and more out of date and out of touch with the realities. The countries in the MENA regions are very diverse. They want to stand out and shape their own foreign engagements and foreign relations. They're all interested, of course, in the European market, and more broadly, they're interested in greater integration with Europe, including at the human level. So they're very interested in making sure that the workforce of all around the Mediterranean region can move around and can be part of an integrated whole. And in that context, which is a context in which conflict is still in the picture, not only in Europe, in Eastern Europe, but also in the South, the risk of conflict is very high. I think what a new Barcelona process would need is a clear focus on sustainable development, making prosperity, common prosperity, the glue that keeps all these different countries and their different trajectories together, working together on sustainable development. So a process that is, political, but largely economic driven. After all, the European Union itself was a political project, largely predicated on economic integration first and political integration in a way to follow. And we need the private sector much more involved than it was at the time of the launching of the Barcelona process, which was very intergovernmental, very bureaucratic also in a way process. So what I would contemplate is the European Union and others putting on the table the right incentives and the right frameworks for then the private sector, civil society to take up the challenge and build a new type of partnership, mainly around the idea of common prosperity, fighting climate change together in the Mediterranean region, which will be a hotspot for climate disruptions, and adopting together sustainable solutions that allow all of our economies to grow while respecting the environment and limiting the impact of human activity on climate and the ecosystem. Exactly, so it has to work for the private sector. I think the private sector is looking for opportunities, and what they need is a set of incentives, as I was saying, to be able to operate. There was a lot of discussion at today's conference about the transition, the energy transition. It will not happen magically. There have to be, subsidies, there have to be incentives. The technology has become much cheaper, has become more diverse. There are a lot of companies willing to invest. Unfortunately, in the South, they still find a very fragmented political situations, countries not in good terms with each other, countries that sometimes have closed borders. So there is homework to be done also in the region in terms of trying to at least mitigate some of the ongoing tensions, again with a common goal of prosperity. So it's not just about creating a community of values or a community that sort of abides by the same political objectives and visions, but it's really about, at this time of geopolitical crisis and also environmental crisis, coming together behind sustainable solutions that can let our economies grow in a sustainable manner.